Hello folks, boatbrew.com here, Arnipils as usually at the mic. Today I'm gonna bring you an overview of what's been happening in Standard and in Modern for the past couple of weeks. All the main events, GPs, Magic Online Metagame, so both paper and online metagames, both formats. I'll start with Modern right now, and I'm only gonna touch on the main events that been open to public in terms of results. I'm gonna scan pretty quickly, but I'm gonna open up some rogue builds and explain you why this and why that. And I'm also gonna discuss positioning of different archetypes in the metagame right now and the trends that are seeming on the surface in terms of what's winning, what's not, and the shares and so on. So we're gonna start with Modern, and the first one I have opened up right now is the main Modern event at Bazaar of Moxen, where there were medium-sized events for a bunch of Europeans for all constructed formats pretty much. There was a vintage main event, there was legacy, there was modern, there was standard. And apparently in the modern main event the winner emerged, and that was through the breach of Valakut. So basically a red-green ramp tag. What it means is that you have a lot of ramp spells, and you have some interaction in forms of Anger of the Gods, in the forms of Lightning Bolts, but mostly you just ramp or get some value out of Coursers, and you cast your Primeval Titans, get your lands, get your Valakuts, and then you have a bunch of mountains in your deck, so even if you just get annihilated in terms of your creatures, so if all your creatures die, still if you have like Valakuts in play, you can just draw a bunch of mountains and shoot down your opponent that way. And the good part about that deck is that with a bit of ramp and a bit of luck, especially playing against blue decks with counter spells, you can just cast the Summoning Trap for 0 instead of 6 mana, look at top 7 and get an Emrakul or Prime Time into play, and you go from there. Then again with a bit of ramp at instant speed, you can haste in an Emrakul or Prime Time once you get up to 5 mana, so that's a plan. The cyber for this deck is kind of more or less standard. This guy opted for a tiny black splash of a Blood Crypt, and then he gets Slaughter Games in the sideboard, and the rest is more or less standard. Well, his Engineered Explosives as a one-off in the sideboard gets a bit better. And then the interesting part is Lane of Sanctity, probably against Burn, against discard spells, and things like that. Ad Nauseum combo went to second place. Giant Eldrazi Folks, Grixis controls Cape Shift. That's probably the Bring to Light version, I suppose. No, it's again just a red-green. That's interesting development, including such rogue cards like Hard Expedition, Mumvoli Acid Moss even, and then Primal Command, the green command main deck as well. And then this sweet cards in the sideboard in form of Boil to hit on blue control decks. That's pretty sweet. Then you probably wonder which Eldrazi version it is. Eldrazi has been sort of pushed down quite a bit. And I see Lightning Bolt and Path to Exile in the same deck, so this is what looks to be like Jeskai Eldrazi, which is pretty interesting. So out of blue you abuse like Sky Spawners and Drowners. Out of white you get Displacer, there's even one Obligator in the deck. Then yeah, you have Bolts and Paths. He even plays Maps in here, that's interesting. And then pretty much the usual sideboard like we've seen with the blue-white Eldrazi before Ayvugen get hammered. Yeah. And then just like a Pyroclasm or something tossed in. And then I really like Grixis control right now. It seems to be okay. This one is a little interesting. I'll talk about the deck list from the top 8 and top 32 of the Grand Prix LA this past weekend as well. But this version, instead of just going for Snapcasters and Tassigurs, is main win condition. Sliced in an Angler, which is kind of a third Tassigur in a way. But he also played Dark Whalers. The appeal is that it's good with Ancestral Visions and a bunch of other spells, like Free Anger of the Gods main deck. Wow, that's kind of crazy. And no Jace in this deck, so it's kind of hard to get value out of those Angers in some matchups. And sometimes it's just that, and then you have pretty much no way to cycle it. That seems kinda odd. 3 Levamancers in the sideboard, that's crazy. Oh, I really like this card, and I think it should deserve to be seen more often, and should see more play. Crypt Incursion. For 3 mana at instant speed, you can exile all creatures from one graveyard, from any graveyard, and then you gain 3 life for each card exiled this way. That's pretty cool. Only good against certain decks and certain matchups. I don't know, what's the best matchup to use it against? Dredge, of course, but Dredge, even though it seems like it's good right now, but hasn't been really popping up just yet, but because it's still a very new deck, and not many people kind of dived into that direction yet, I guess. Well, Elves is just a standard Azuri Elves, although there are some nuances in that list that I want to point out. Black sources like Palace and the Tomb are there so that you can hardcast the Shaman of the packs, but otherwise it's just your standard Azuri Elf Ball deck, basically just aggro. What I don't like here is that you don't have a one of, let's say, Temple Garden that he can definitely fetch with some fetch lands and stuff like that, and he also has Canopy. But that gives you a lot of awesome white sideboard cards, including Burdened Forge Tender, which is pretty good right now because of Grixis and Jund. And Anger of the Gods is in so many decks, and this deck really struggles against those. So that's, I think, an overlook. It's almost a free splash. It's just one Temple Garden, and then you play 5 to 6 fetches, and then you have Canopy as well. And then you can also chord out that Burnt and Force Tender and things like that. And those white cards actually really help. All those Rest in Peace, all those Stony Silences and things like that. They're just awesome. His sideboard is a little bit weird with Extraction tossed in there. I don't know why. It's kind of really weird. They're all good cards in that sideboard. Maybe Fauna Shaman is kind of weird, but that's it. What I do like what he found out is the Elvish Champion as a one-off. It doesn't seem like it's a great, huge discovery, but it's still sweet. It basically helps against a bunch of creature decks. It helps against Jund midrange, and it helps against Absent Company, just to get through Bar Stall, when you just need to get through some damage through ground combat, and yeah, it helps. It's kind of like Lord of Atlantis for this deck, and serves basically the same purpose. Okay, moving on. Couple of Ad Nauseam decks actually winning a trial in Frankfurt. That's MKM. Well, it's basically probably should be spelled MCM because it's Magic Card Market Series. That's the biggest cards shop basically in Europe. It's actually powered basically by just users who trade cards in there. Basically best source for buying and selling cards in Europe, I would say, even though it has some tricks about it. So yeah, 2 Ad Nauseam combo decks, which is kind of interesting. Just 57 players, so not a huge event, but still. It was a pretty stacked event. I think I've heard about Martin Zimmermann before and Julian Nubb, who actually won the event. is the guy under nickname is Julian. He's streaming on Twitch and produces content for YouTube and stuff. So really cool guy. Yeah, but he normally plays elves and legacy, but this is modern, so I suppose he didn't want to play elves in modern. And yeah, I like Ad Nauseam as a deck in modern, so it's definitely fine. And no surprise that an experienced player won the event. You have Merfolks, which are also like actually going up quite a bit in terms of power level in this metagame. Secretly one of the best decks you could play. Although the list I've seen really don't play that many counter spells, and that's worrying me. I guess because it's like really an aggro deck, it has to be very focused game 1. In game 2 you side in some counter spells, but still, like in those sideboards I've seen very few counter spells, and I think at least on the sideboard they should probably run a few more counters, not just like 2 pierces, but a bit more than that. I feel like this is just a green turn, so like just straight mono green, it seems. Is it? No, you still have fire spouts, so it's like still red green Tron essentially. Though very little touch of red, like the minimum. Though the mana base doesn't tell you that, but this is kind of a standard mana base, although I've seen Jola set running actually more than one Sanctum, that's for sure. And probably more lands as well. Yeah, and his build is really different. Different. Yeah, but Warping Well is one of those really cool cards that Tron gained in Modern. Nothing super amazing here, so I'm not sure if I particularly like this list. Well, most of the cards in here are pretty standard. I suppose the list from Lost Sad is almost the same, although instead of Fire Spout he just ran Bolts, and then his sideboard was a little bit different. Well, we'll get to that soon. So there's another Tron. Which Tron is that? Oh, that's a spicy one. So that's a mono blue one. Basically, what you get from blue is that you get First for Knowledge to dig deep. You have counter spells like Remand and Condensate to interact, and Spell Burst, and you have Reef to bounce everything. And you have Repeal just to bounce something. He even plays one of Ancestral Vision. Nice. Okay, Treasure Mage basically fetches you up Wormcoil Engine, Sundering Titan, or Platinum Angel. He also plays one of Solemn Simulacrum just to ramp body on a stake, because you don't play green, so your options are limited. He even plays one of Footnotes here, that's kinda cute. This guy opted to not really play the Oblivion Stones, so he has Ugins, and instead he opted to run one Perilous Vault instead. That's kinda interesting. And then a couple of Mindslavers, a staple of Blue Tron deck, simply because you have Academy Ruins, so you can have this cute Mindslaver lock. Any interesting things in his sideboard? No, like nothing really out of place. I suppose I understand like a second Wormcoil in the sideboard. I suppose I'm a bit surprised that there is only one in the main deck. Second Solemn Simulacrum in the sideboard is kinda really weird. The rest of things I do really understand why they're there in those numbers. Right, next one. So that's Star City Modern Open Indianapolis. That's the one a week ago, a bit more than a week ago. 675 players, which is pretty a lot. And this event apparently was won by the Nahiri Jeskai. Basically, it's your hardcore Jeskai control deck with main win condition being ultimating Nahiri, and then grab an Emrakul and win this way. and the rest just helps you to survive and interact with your opponent. So basically that's the plan of the deck. Sometimes you can win with colonnades, but that's very rare. Nothing insane out of the sideboard here, so we can try to take a look at other lists. In fact, took second with Andrew Jessup. That's a good run for him. Overturf is a name I've heard before. Grixis Aggro, so I suppose that's Delver. Yeah, that's Grixis Delver. That's pretty nice to see actually Delver deck doing well. Wow, okay, so that's an interesting part. 4 visions in the sideboard of Delver decks. So I suppose what he does is that he probably trims some of the kinda anti-aggro cards, and against control he just sides in 4 visions. So he probably just takes out a Peeler. What else? Maybe Bolts. I could see that happening. And maybe something else. Like a couple of Scours or something. And then it adds in like counter squalls as well. A Dispel, things like that. Maybe Spell Pierce. So I suppose that's the plan in there. What else? So assortment of different decks. So Modern is actually looking pretty healthy right now. A lot of decks doing well. I think it's about the players and the experience mostly. So which Eldrazi is that here? Okay, so that's like mono white hate bears. No, black white hate bears mixed up with Eldrazi's a little bit. Yeah, I like that. So it's black white hate bears because you have Tidehollow, Scholar, and Talias, and Arbiters, and Vials, Flicker Wisp. And you can call this Eldrazi because you have Smashers and Displacers and Stranglers. Basically, Scholar plus Strangler are the best buddies. Or with Whatnot series, really like the deck. Not sure if this is the best list possible out there. Looks very solid. Looks very solid. Might be even an optimal list. But there was another Eldrazi deck in the top 8 or something. Oh, 11th place, but that was probably not black-white, or was it? No, it was green and what? Yeah, looks like it's banned, but really kind of different from what Pascal Maynard played at the GPLA, because you have Tarmogoyfs and very little blue. I mean, even less than Pascal had, I think. Just the Drowners in the main deck. So really a beefy list. I do understand the sideboard though. So yeah, banned Eldrazi is alive. And I guess I do like Pascal Maynard's list more than this one. So let's look at this 8th place Rogue list, which is kind of weird. So it's basically red-white mid-range with the Nahiri Emrakul package in it, just like in Jeskai. The big part of this deck, I suppose, is 4 main deck Chalices, switching off a bunch of decks. He has a lot of hate here. Ley Lines, Blood Moons, a bunch of Wrath effects, bunch of Planeswalkers as win conditions, so it's not only Nahiri Emrakul. What I don't like in this deck is probably like Stormwrath, seems kinda weak as a one-off. I guess an extra target to tutor with Nahiri if you like Emrakul is exiled somehow, for example. But then again, you have like 6 other Planeswalkers to win with, so I don't know what's the thing. I suppose I somewhat understand the Spirit Guides here because you want a fast Blood Moon here or something, but I don't know if that's necessary. you can obviously cycle it through with Nahiri, of which I actually want 4 in this deck. So I probably would put ley lines to sideboards and maybe 1 or 2 blood moons to sideboard as well. And then, well, Helix is good, but it's strange to not see Path to Exile in here at all. And also I kinda want lightning bolts in here as well. So there is a chance that this deck doesn't need this many planeswalkers. I probably would want to play 4 Nahiris in here, I suppose. And then probably would want another target for Nahiri in addition to Emrakul. Nahiri fetches up not just creature, it could be an artifact. So some interesting artifact could be cool. But the problem is that Chalice is bad because it puts it directly into play. So it has to be something not like Chalice. So I'm not sure this deck needs this many planeswalkers to kind of like for its win conditions and control. So yeah, I would make it less tricky and slice in some paths and bolts and move some stuff sideboard, and I don't think Spirit Guide really helps. Turn to Blood Moon could be amazing, but a lot of the time you would probably wish to draw something else. And the sideboard is great. I wonder why he wants conscripts here. Probably it's just a great tutor target for Nahiri. With Nahiri, I actually might want to diversify the sideboard a little bit and actually try to find some good artifacts to tutor with her as a backup, and maybe instead of 2 conscripts, maybe keep 1 and then 1 of something else, so just some value creature to tutor with her. I don't know exactly what. The curious part here is the Celestial Flare. Why I think it's fine in the sideboard is that this helps against Poggles and Infact. So that's a thing. So I suppose this is why this card is in here, and just as a 2-off. And it's actually flexible, so it's an okay in different matchups. So, but now you know why it's in there. It's for those 2 decks, I think. Nothing else crazy here. Slivers is pretty spicy. Top 16 even. So 4 color company Avervile Slivers, just pump it up, pump it up, pump it up. And then what? More weird Slivers in the sideboard. That's pretty crazy. That's just insane. I actually think I would play 1 Hive Lord in the main deck, because it's just so insane. You take up your Vial up to 5, and then they're like, Wrath of God, kill your board. No, my guys are indestructible, screw you. I don't know. There are some decks that play mass destruction, mass removal spells main deck, so I would actually, I think, probably play it main deck. Although in some metagames maybe it's safer to put Hive Lords into the sideboard. Okay, that's probably it for that event. Then there was the Modern event Frankfurt, which was just a week ago. The one I showed you was actually just a trial for that main event. Yeah, so the main event was pretty damn big, and it was won by Junt. And very rarely I actually see Abzan doing super well. It's mostly just Junt. So I don't know like what really Adel is thinking and why he is actually advocating for Abzan or Junk over Junt. Well, Junt is simply much better right now, I think. So that's weird. Julian actually with Ad Nauseam made the top 8 of the main event, so that's good for him. And then Zimmerman, who's also in that top 8 of the trial, also ended up second with, I suppose, Nahiri Jeskai. Yeah, actually, this top 8 in terms of archetypes kind of describes the metagame sort of well, I think. Because in LA there were a lot of infect decks, and there were a bunch of them ended up top 32. And also Naya Burn was quite a big deal at LA. But yeah, Affinity is doing great, Benteldrazi is doing fine, Ad Nauseum seems to be a good deck at European events. Escape Shift pop-ups from time to time. Which version is it, by the way? Oh, it's the Bring to Light one. With some spice in terms of Hunting Wells and Pulsa Murasa, which are becoming kind of a common cards, common tutor options for Bring to Light. Hunting Wells is just like alternative win condition kind of a or well, it's basically a ram spell that can help you do some missing damage from time to time. So just in terms of multi-functionality, it's a pretty interesting card. Dragonlord Jamoke in the sideboard and Wormcoil, that's interesting. Sudden Shock is actually a card that's probably gonna pop up in Modern quite a lot. Jola said in his top 8 profile story for GPLA actually made a cool story about him playing with Red Green Tron against Absent Company, where opponent just like cast Quasali Pride Mage and just sat with it, and Joe was like, well, Sudden Shock your Pride Mage, so you cannot actually use it. So that was probably an insurance for something like Oblivion Stone or things like that. So yeah, make sure you dig out those because it's a wonderful sideboard option in so many decks right now, it seems. What else? Yeah, Tron and fact, Escape Shift and Eldrazi Affinity, Jeskai Nahiri. Jand is doing fine. So now we're moving on to top 8 at GPLA, which was won by Merfolks. So yeah, what I don't exactly like in his sideboard is just that he plays only a couple of spell peers. So he's pretty soft to combo decks, I would say. Luckily there are not that many fast combo decks right now outside of Infect, for which he does have Gut Shot, and then things like Tidebinder Mage, for example. And he can always try to be very aggressive as well, so that's another thing. What else? Okay, Joel said, I don't know like exactly how the top 8 shaped up, I don't remember exactly. Anyways, Joe in the top 8 with Red Green Tron. What's interesting about his build is that bolts over the mass removal spells. I do like that. Sudden Shocks seem to be great. I told you Warping Whale are great in the sideboard of that deck. They're here in the sideboard basically as the main answer against opposing Crumble to Dust, of which he plays himself a one copy. Grixis Control is great. Pretty light on threats here, just Eskers and Snapcasters. I mentioned that before today. Weird that he opted for Sun Droplet over Dragon's Claw for life gain. Well, normally in most Grixis decks, Vampiric Link is probably the best card against Burn, but he's so light on actual threats, so it's fine that he's not playing the Link. But Droplet is really slow, and what I like about Dragon's Claw is that you know, it comes in those kind of like Zoo Burn matchups. But the fact that is you have quite a few red spells of your own, so you can actually gain more than one life of Dragon's Claw and help trigger it and so forth. So it's kind of weird that he opted for Droplet here. Because Droplet is just one life a turn, as far as I remember. But he has Crypt Incursion in the sideboard, yeah. Definitely should keep this card in my pool close to me for situations like that, or if my friends would need to borrow that for some events. Yeah, John's in top 4 there. Nothing crazy except that like he has Kala's main deck. Definitely support that decision. I think it's correct to do so. The rest of his deck is pretty standard. Outpost Siege actually showed up in sideboards of John's mid-range before, so it's not a very new tech. Affinity, Bantle Razzie from Maynard. Has just one Mimic, but that's okay. He does play Steerings, that's super cool. He has 5 mana, 1 mana Dorks. I think this deck might actually want 6. I think 6 wouldn't be that bad. Though I'm not sure you still have Temple, so there is that. I do like how aggressive this deck is. And I do like the sideboard. I think they tested the deck and tuned it quite a bit, so all of the cards in the sideboard make sense, except that I'm a bit puzzled by this second copy of Eldrazi Mimic. I don't know exactly what's that for and how you're supposed to tweak your deck, so maybe for mirror matches, I don't know. Hard to say. Another Affinity deck, an Absent Company deck, but I think... no, there was one in top 8, yeah. So, big points here with this list is full 4 Eternal Witness, otherwise the main deck is pretty standard. And then he opted to go for Fireka in the sideboard. That's the deck that was brought by Logan Mice a few weeks ago. And yeah, he might actually just straight ahead copied his sideboard with 4 Scholars and things like that. So Scholar is fine against Throne, it's fine against very fast combo decks. It's actually nice because unlike Thoughtseize or things like that, you can flip it off the company. Basically, against Control, Sin Collector is simply better, but Scholar is also fine. And I like it because it actually can help against decks where you don't expect to see many instants of sorceries. So it's pretty focused sideboard. He has both Quasali and Reclamation Sage in the sideboard, so that's interesting. One, of course, there's just a value card that you can side in against Control, where you probably don't need cards like Corsair Pontiff and things like that. And sometimes Fiend Hunter is not the best card, especially if you have still like DKs and paths for their Kalitas, etc. Another card that you might think of in place of Farika is the Linvala. So Farika is here in the slot there, which is normally occupied by Linvala in Absent Company. I'm not sure which one is better. I like the fact that Farika still helps in the mirror because it shuts down their graveyard synergies, but you would have to keep up 2 mana all the time. On the other hand, Linvala can be flipped from company, and like it's a good threat against Control, like helps in grinding matchups, but I'm not sure which one I actually want and which one I like more. But it's an interesting card. I don't have much of experience with it in Modern. I tried to play her, but then I took her out for the local Modern Championship at the end of April. So yeah, like tell me if you like it or not. So far I don't have enough practice with the card. Top 32 deck lists, that's again just kinda hairy. Then we have In Fact, nothing crazy there. Except for like 4 kitchen things in the sideboard. Wow, that's That's crazy. And the Corruptor main deck. Okay, this guy went deep, and 2 Twisted Image main deck. So yeah, pretty interesting list. Affinity, nothing super crazy out there in that list. But that's a Giant by Vidyantovic Giant. He finished up 12. Good player, good finish for him. Another Merfolk's deck with Seize Claims, so he basically has 5 Seas to screw up his opponent. That's pretty nasty. Mold Drifter and the Sovereign in the sideboard. That's pretty interesting indeed. And more claims in the sideboard for Tron decks and multicolor control decks, I guess. Okay, another Absent Company list. Very standard main deck, even more standard than the previous one we saw. The slot of the 4th Eternal Witness is now occupied by a main deck Pride Mage, which is okay main deck card, though I think Pontiff is a much better main deck card. So and there's also Scavenge in this main deck. So I don't know. Everything is pretty standard, and if you feel like you want to have Pride Mage main deck, it's fine. To me, it's just not always a good thing to do, because it's kind of a dead card against control, and something like 4th Eternal Witness would be better, etc. Also, I see a shift towards just running 1 Spellskite main deck instead of 2 or 3, like many players did in the past weeks. He opted for Sin Collectors over Scholars, and then there's a 1 Thoughtseize to complement that. Otherwise, kinda standard. Instead of Mind Sensor, he opted for a 1 of Fulminator Mage. I actually like both, but I think right now I kinda like Mind Sensor more, because it actually does way more work than Fulminator. In matchups like Scapeshift and Tron, it actually matters way more. Only if you have like 3-4 Fulminators, then that's a thing. But then again, you can have Revoker for Tron to shut down Ugin, a Blazing Stone, Karn. So that's a very cool card, which many people overlook. And yeah, a couple of voices in the sideboard, and he still has DKs and paths in the sideboard. So I think like my the sideboard that I would probably like the most will be a mixture of this and the previous deck list for Absent Company. Pretty crazy green-white tokens from MetNets, nice technology. So basically something like black-white tokens, but with green. It's an interesting deck. He has a lot of great cards in the sideboard. He has Rule of Law for combo decks, Stony Silence for a bunch of decks, Gravedigger's Cage for Reanimator and things like that, Force Sender, Corrosion, Timely Gutshot. Like, the sideboard is just awesome. This sideboard is just awesome. I think the main deck is also quite fine. There are a few things you can tweak with this deck, but I guess this is probably how it should be. Like a very well-tuned list. I really like it. I really recommend it. The sideboard is great. You're still fine against combo decks, even though you don't have black, you don't have access to discard spells. But all the same perks of black-white tokens are still present in this green-white tokens list. You still have a bunch of pumps and planeswalkers with Nissi and Gideon. So yeah, great deck. Bring to Light Scapeshift, another Merfolk deck from Andrei Strosky, from the Magic Pro, who actually helped a lot to prepare for the guy who actually won the whole GP with also the same list, I guess, with Merfolks. Black-green mid-range, so you don't have to be necessarily in Jonder Junk, you can do this as well. Infect decks, burn decks, Grixis control, all are viable. Tron decks, Merfolks, burn. Green White Hate Bears is alive, but it's not like tier 1 deck right now, it seems. Okay, moving on. Some Magic Online results for Modern. That's one of the competitive Modern Constructed League, whatever. So bring to light Scapeshifts with Spice in form of Peon Kiran Nalar, with a Dreadboard that you can actually really cast, not just from Bring to Light. You have some black sources, even a basic Swamp, things like that. Glandolander Archmage, one of the great cards in that deck. Chandra is a spicy one in the sideboard here. I really like that. Mardu midrange, crazy deck. Not super impressed by it, but I think it's still fine. It's still fine. I prefer to have counter spells over discard spells, and I don't mind to have both. But yeah, the deck is still good against creature decks, against control decks. They still have discard for combo decks, so it's fine. It's fine. It has all the tools you could want from a mid-range-ish control-ish deck. Death Shadow aggro deck that we haven't seen all that much in the past couple of weeks, but it still exists. It's still viable. That's Green White Hate Bears here. Then we have Burning Tree Blitz deck here as well. The deck that has been shown and present a lot online, but not so much on paper. But I think the deck is great right now still. So more people should play it, I think. That's some really weird Timur concoction. Basically, Timur mid-range deck, even with Shackles, with one of Dark Dwellers for Divisions, Handmasters, etc. Yeah, interesting deck. Suppose I may even like this more than Timur Delver. Looks very solid indeed. Nahiri Jeskai, Jant. What else is there? Calibur, where it's having fun with what? That's a blue-white fruit. No, blue-red fruit the breach deck. That's interesting. So he was like, who needs white? Who needs Nahiri? So I'm just gonna fruit the breach Emrakul. Okay, guess that's the thing. So it's basically a blue-red flash kind of tempo control deck with fruit the breach Emrakul spliced into it. I guess that's fine. Anything cool in the sideboard? Couple of different Jaces, I guess. Blood Moon. That's about it. Then we have Red-Green Eldrazi. I haven't seen those in quite a while right now. Basically green for Breaker and Stirrings, and then Crine, and then red for Flash and Return and Bolts. That's pretty crazy to see this deck popping up again after the ban. What's that? So that's banned Eldrazi. So yeah, Eldrazi are still alive, so they're not really dead, and Tron is not dead. So that's something important to notice, to keep in mind. So now this is Abzan. So Abzan is actually more present in Europe, I think, and well, and actually way more present in Magic Online, I guess, than on paper. Elves, even with Boreal Druids, that's, no, yeah. And Duskwatch Recruiter, that's pretty crazy indeed. Well, this one at least splashes for Force Tender and has Stony Silences, so that's cool. But yeah, apparently Topters has been really weakened by Stony Silences everywhere. So the hopes were not there. Maybe that's good, because if that deck would be like still very strong, not sure if that would be good for the format and the metagame. Another red-white Nahiri, maybe even the same player. Elves and Death Shadows aggro. And now we're moving on to standard. So that's the main event, the standard main event from Bazaar of Moxen in France. That was, yeah, a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, pretty much. Grixis Control, Abzan combo, I think, yeah. And the cool part about that deck, because you have Evangel, that's one of the discovered cards in the past couple of weeks for that deck. You basically have the combo of Cutthroat plus Brood Monitor and Displacer for infinite drains, and Evangel is basically your Cutthroat number 5 and 6, so he ups that combo. What I don't like about this list that ended up apparently second at that event for like 113 players is that he doesn't have Smashers. He does have Footnote Series main deck even, and he doesn't shrine the Cryptolite Rife, which is fine, I guess, because this means you're not so reliant on just dumping a bunch of things on the board, and control decks are pretty strong right now. And I like that he put Declaration and Stone into the sideboard as an answer to opposing Kalitas, which just wrecks you. But yeah, Footnote Seers and Smashers is your answer against control decks that want to dissolve your combo, so you take out some of that combo and bring in those heavy hitters and discard spells like Transgress, and sometimes Duress, I guess. I really like this spicy attack of One of Ever After, but it would have been so much better if you would have Smashers in the sideboard, because Return and Smashers would be even sweeter than Footnote Seers against control, because once they tap out or they run out of cards answering your threats, then you just like Ever After bring back a couple of Smashers and kill you out of nowhere. So that would be really sweet. What else? A bunch of bands. And yeah, I'm a bit surprised about that, but I guess the deck is really strong, but I don't suggest this deck to people. Just take and go to events. You really need to play a lot with that deck, because it is really skill rewarding, and you gotta play that deck real fast, because it's not a very fast deck. And things like that. What kind of Jeskai is that even? That's kind of crazy to see. So that's a nod to the old Jeskai with 3 Naggin Thoughts main deck. Wow, that's crazy. And 3 Radiant Flames main deck. That's great. And the Nahiri main deck alongside Chandra. Of course, you have your Jace's Linvala main deck, Outcast main deck, Axis and Tempers, Negates main deck, 4 commands, Avacyn's Judgment and 1 Declaration, and even main deck Descend upon the Sinful. This deck is super sweet. This deck is super sweet. And the sideboard is also great with 4 Fevered Visions. Yeah, I really recommend this deck. And this deck is really cool. Okay, so that's SCG Classic a week ago, won by green-white tokens, and then there was the Eldrazi Ramp, second place. The deck that I think is secretly one of the top 3 decks right now in Standard, because it's decent against aggressive decks. It's and you can tune your deck quite a bit against those. At the same time, you're pretty good against mid-range control decks, so yeah, really nice deck, I think. Season Pass Control, that's the blue-green rock deck. He even has an Ulamog in there, which he can fetch with the... does he run it? Well, he can, I guess, fetch it up with Petition, yeah, he can. And that's, I guess, a good way to close out games. Another one, which is also pretty solid, is the, what was it? Gaia's Revenge, so that's another option. He even plays 1 Aurora, that's pretty ballsy. That's pretty ballsy. A Hydra in there too, fetching up a Fan or Quagmire. Very diverse sideboard. Pretty interesting deck. Yeah, you see the Revenge there in the sideboard, so his main deck, like closing out the games, is just with Ulamog. And 4 of Advocates and Trackers, which is really where I think the Rock decks, the Season Past Aurora decks should be heading, and also the direction that Red-Green Ramp Eldrazi deck should be heading to be able to combat fast aggro decks. So instead of 2 mana, like mana door creatures, I think they should run those 2. Just to have something going on early, and etc. Is that, so I think I wanted to look at that. Is it just Goggles deck? Not exactly. Drowners and Ulamogs and Archives and the 5 mana Jace and a bunch of counter spells and removals and Diggins and Chandra. So this is not a Goggles deck, but I'm not convinced. Seems kind of clunky and inconsistent. Like the sideboard is okay. I like the sideboard, but main deck seems kind of odd. Right, a bunch of banned decks at the Frankfurt Magic Card Market Series event. 268 players. That was a week ago. But the winner is actually not Banned Company, it's Banned Humans, which is interesting, to say the least. Basically, on top of the common Banned Company elements, you can just have way more aggression through inspectors pumped by multiple lieutenants. So you're just a bit faster and more aggressive than the normal Banned Company. Guess that's fine. And other banned decks were just normal kind of standard Banned Company decks. At the same time, online was been happening in the Constructed League events. So here you see a pretty weird Naya Planeswalkers deck, for example. Even with main deck Nahir, which is kinda crazy. Well, the ability to tutor up a Dragonlord Atarka, I guess, is pretty sweet. Avacyn's, Advocates Tracker, so yeah, also, so green mid-range control decks should probably look into sporting a bunch of Advocates and Trackers. I think like that's the safest direction to go if you don't want to stumble against aggro decks. Purge main, Decorations, Radiance, anything spicy in the sideboard. So yeah, Moonlight is pretty crazy, so I'm playing in standard myself some weird Absent Company deck, but not the one that most of the people are playing. So it evolves around a bunch of Ally Drained effects, Zolaports, Shaman of the Pack, so it has Elves package, it has March from the Tomb in it. So normally, how I side against control, I take out companies and some creatures and side in leaps, a bunch of discard spells and a bunch of removals for Kalatas and company. But then there is this thing that a lot of white decks can side in Moonlight against you, and then your Marsh from the Tomb doesn't work. So that's the sad part. Well, okay, like you took out companies, but then like Marsh is pretty crazy, while Leap still works, so that's a thing. So that's definitely a thing. But against Grixis control, I think Marsh from the Tomb is still great, and things like that. But if you're on some combo Aristocrats deck, maybe there is a chance you want to just side in like a bunch of those smashers and forget about companies, because then you get wrecked by a Timely Moonlight, which effectively nets them a card, and that's annoying. Okay, that's a company deck with Dragonlord Atarka in it. That's crazy. So it's kind of Naya, no, like 4 color, no black value company rights deck, which is okay. Apparently it's a fine choice. Black white Eldrazi deck, it seems, or no, it's just because it has, or is it just mono white? Mono white Eldrazi. Okay, that's a thing. That's a thing. I'm not sure which one I like more. Mono red or mono white. It's up to you. Don't think I have enough data to give you a good answer. But yeah, Secure the Ways plus Gideon actually might be a good enough tiebreaker to, and Decoration especially as well, to push towards mono white. You get Moonlight, Linvala, Tragic Arrogance. Yeah, I guess white is better. I guess white is better indeed. Black, white, Planeswalkers, humans. Okay, another Aurora deck. That's pretty sweet. Probably one of the sweetest decks in Standard right now. Okay, let's finish it up by checking out one more constructed Standard in the league deck lists. Chain. So again, red green ramp. Really like this list. It's not really pushing with 4 Atarkus. It just has 2, but I do like that he has Advocates and Trackers, so he's not really dead to aggro, to fast aggro like humans. At the same time, he has a lot of game against control. Not sure about this many World Breakers main deck, but I guess it's fine. I suppose that's fine. I do like his sideboard indeed. I don't know how good is Warping Whale in the sideboard for those decks. It might actually be a bit better in the more aggressive builds, not in the ramp versions. But this sideboard is still fine, that's for sure. You can still just side into like more beatdown stakes if you really want to. Green white tokens, the standard, humans, what else? Band company, more humans, more right stacks. It's not that many control decks online actually. It's more of ramp decks. And this one is not Seasons Past deck exactly, even though it has one past in the sideboard. But this more of a like Owen Turtenwald's Soul Time Midrange list, basically, where only blue cards are main deck, like Silumgars, and then things like Command and Negate out of the sideboard, and the rest is just like black-green value. Well, because of the third color, you can run Painful Truths and draw more cards compared to Read the Bones, but then those are blind cards. At the same time, this deck is really creature heavy. The thing about Winnow is that it kills Silumgar, it kills Kalitas, it kills Jace, it kills a bunch of things in Standard right now, so actually now is a good time for this card. It still doesn't kill quite a few things, but there are quite a few 2/3s and 3/2s right now between Advocate and Tireless Tracker, so there is that. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, folks.